if you have a podcast, this is the best way to grow your podcast. So as I'm sure Rachel will attest to, whatever platform you want to grow, the best way to grow it is on that platform, right? So
I didn't know this. I feel so silly. Are you serious? Yeah.
Well, think about it. If you want to get more Instagram followers, you don't go start a YouTube channel to get more Instagram followers, right?
I'm so excited because Jaclyn, You're here. Welcome.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, we have so much fun. The funny part is we haven't seen each other for what? 4 years in person? 3 years.
Oh, 4 years. 4 years.
But yet I feel like I just still know you because of online and everything.
Same.
So tell me a little bit about what's going on lately in your world. I know your podcast has absolutely blown up over the last 4 years, but over the last year?
Yeah, I would say so. So I've been podcasting for 5 years.
Yep.
But my current podcast, Go To Gal, I started just about 2 years ago. And yes, as soon as, here's the thing, I'm obsessed. I feel like I'm a podcasting evangelist. So I'm obsessed with the podcasting platform. And as much success as I had on it those first 3 years, as soon as I started this new podcast that was all under my brand and was really strategic and intentional, not just about creating content on the podcasting platform, but about creating a growth engine for my business and really making that the center. That's when I just started to see that snowball growth and momentum.
I love that you just said that because I was talking about that earlier today. When you figure out what's going to be the flywheel in your business, it's so good. Do you want to share a little bit about your experience with podcast guesting?
Sure. And here's the thing. If you have a podcast, this is the best way to grow your podcast. So as I'm sure Rachel will attest to, whatever platform you want to grow, the best way to grow it is on that platform, right? So
I didn't know this. I feel so silly. Are you serious? Yeah.
Well, think about it. If you want to get more Instagram followers, you don't go start a YouTube channel to get more Instagram followers, right?
Promoting everything else on podcast interviews. And you just gave me a complete strategy. What?
Yes. So if you have a podcast, you're on someone else's podcast, you're already talking to, hopefully, your ideal audience, right? If you're taking the time to do a guest interview and you're on the platform that they want to consume content on. So they likely want to find other podcasts. And with podcast content, it's different than other content. So with a YouTube video, for instance, you're really only going to have someone's attention for so long because you're asking for all of their attention when it's a video, right? When you're reading content, you need all of their attention to read that. So you're only going to have their attention for so long. With podcast content, and I think that this is a huge reason why we're going to see podcast content continue to grow and take off, is it's different because nobody sits down and is like, okay, I'm going to listen to a podcast now, and just sits on their couch and listens to a podcast. Nobody does this. They're listening to your podcast while they're driving, while they're grocery shopping, while they're doing dishes, while they're doing laundry, while they're changing their baby's diaper. Literally, you're in their ear. It's very intimate, and you're literally a part of their life. And a lot of times too, it becomes, and this isn't so much as for a guest, but with your own podcast, becomes a routine. If your episodes come out every Tuesday, that's whatever the thing is they normally do on Tuesdays, they get in that habit of listening to you during that thing. So it's a relationship is formed, right? Now, when you're a guest on someone else's podcast, you are getting introduced as an expert on the topic you're there to share about. So you are now getting in front of a new audience of hopefully ideal clients if you've done your research. And the host, who is already seen as an expert to these people listening, is introducing you as an expert. So you are coming into these people's lives as an authority. That is instant authority building that you really can't create on your own, right? So for that reason alone, I love this. And then, yes, they're spending time with you, even if it's a short podcast and it's 20 minutes, 30 minutes. They're listening to you for that full time. Sometimes it's an hour-long conversation. They really get to know you. Oftentimes you're telling stories and that connection is made. So yeah, when you share a freebie or when you tell them to go listen to your podcast, they're much more likely to do that, especially if they're podcast listeners. They want to listen to their podcast. But if you don't have a podcast, yes, they also want your freebie or they want to go connect with you on Instagram because there's something about the platform. I mentioned this earlier with the authority platform, but I could sit across the table from someone pre-COVID and tell them something. Oh, exactly what I'm saying now, right? But if I take that same exact sentence and I say it on a podcast, it holds more weight. And the same goes, I could say it on Instagram stories, I could say it in a Facebook post, but if I say it on a podcast, or if I say it in a blog post, or if I say it on a YouTube channel, it's going to hold more weight because these platforms are just, the platform itself is creating authority, right? So you get that benefit, whether it's your podcast or not, of whatever it is you're saying, it holds more weight and they want to connect with you. They want to learn more from you, wherever that's going to be.
One thing I hear a lot of people say, and I don't know if I agree with it, but I also know that I'm not the expert on podcasts.
All right, I'm ready.
That's for sure. So is that people say like, don't go on podcasts in different niches. And I've done the opposite. I've gone on every kind of podcast. But I'm curious what your thought process is on it, because I'm reevaluating all my life choices.
I love it.
But seriously,
I think this is the year to do that, by the way.
It's such a good year.
Okay. So here's my strategy for this, which is actually you're going to see why I love that Nathan episode so much, because it does tie in here. Okay. So a lot of times, people are so focused on the biggest podcasts, and sometimes it's hard to get on those podcasts, depending on how much experience you have, right? Even if you have a pretty well-established brand, sometimes it can be hard to break through the noise to get on those big podcasts.
Yes, absolutely.
But also, and listen, I think it's great to be on the big podcasts, but the broader the audience you're talking to, not all of them are likely going to be ideal for you, depending on what it is that you do.
Yep.
So nodding back to that conversation where I was sharing with Nathan's advice on what he did early on with ConvertKit, I have a similar strategy for podcasts. Okay. So let's say you're a social media manager for creative entrepreneurs, right? Well, sure, you can go look for podcasts for creative entrepreneurs, but they might be bigger, they might be harder to find, they may be harder to get on. So what I say is go a level down and get really specific of, okay, when you say creative, what do you mean? Do you mean photographers? Do you mean web designers? Do you mean graphic designers, hand letterers? I don't know, right? But let's figure out what are some of those categories of the creative entrepreneurs. There are podcasts that are for them. So if you're looking to get on shows, and especially if you don't have a lot of experience, but even if you do, going to these hyper niche podcasts that are not getting pitched as much, right? Because they are so specific. But here's the thing, everyone listening to that podcast falls within your bigger niche. And so there may be 50 people listening or 100 people listening, which in podcast numbers is not huge, but in real life human numbers, if you're talking to 50 people who are an ideal client for you or 100 people who are an ideal client for you, that is massive. That's significant, right? So imagine doing a couple of those per week and the compound effect that could have on your business. Most of us, especially if you're working with clients in a small one-on-one or a small group capacity, you probably can't handle that many clients, right? So when you're able to be really specific about who you're getting in front of, okay, this might be a smaller group, but they're exactly who I want to talk to.
Oh my gosh, that is so good. And what I love that you just shared, and I think I see this even with big entrepreneurs, is they sometimes overlook small audiences when, truth be told, I've been on some really big podcasts, like some of the top ones in marketing, and you don't see nearly the effect that you think you will. Some of the greatest results I've gotten have been from really tiny podcasts. It's shocking. And I almost want to share that more often so that people don't ever get envious of huge podcast opportunities. You don't get what you think you will. You think I'm going to go on this podcast, I'm going to make $100,000 the next month. Not even close. You maybe see a little, but not as much as sometimes the smaller, more loyal podcasts that I've had the privilege of being a part of.
Yeah. Well, I'm not surprised at all to hear that. And I think that's where when you start to look at this from both sides, it's okay, well, that feels more accessible for me to be a guest on those podcasts. But also, if you're the one with that podcast, now be specific. Don't try to have the small podcast that's for online business owners.
Amen.
It's too broad, right? But if you're that podcast host of the niche, now you see how you can get the bigger guests, because the smart ones know the value. They know they're getting in front of exactly the audience, and they value your audience even if you have 50 listeners.
This has been amazing. I know we're getting to the end of the time, so I want to wrap it up. Jaclyn, where can people learn more about you? Obviously, you have your podcast, so be sure to plug that as well.
Yes. So definitely come over and listen to the Go-To Gal podcast. We have new episodes every Tuesday, and we talk about marketing, mindset, everything that goes into building that business as the go-to gal in your space. But if you are curious about starting your own podcast, then go to jaclynmellone.com/podcaster, and we'll have a resource for you there. My partner, Farnoosh Tarabi, and I, we do challenges every so often to start new podcasts. Also, we have things, we also do challenges for existing podcasters. But if you go to that link, I'll make sure to change it up to whatever we have going on in that moment. And then just jaclynmellone.com to see all of the things.
So great. Thank you so much for joining me today. This has been awesome.
Oh, thank you so much. This has been a blast.
All right. We'll talk soon, guys, in the next episode. Bye for now.
Oh, hang on. You gotta be such a jerk. Let me let him outside.
Perfect. My shoulders hurt. I gotta stretch. Oh, I'm so tight. Ow.
Oh, that looks good.
That feels so good. I'm really tight right now. Oh.